folks, here we go. Good afternoon, one and all. Yes, this is our new slot. I love the concept. We are live. This time we're going to have guests, so it's not just me. We are live right now on our Facebook page, on our YouTube page, on X. I like these platforms, continues to grow. It was 1 week ago today was the verdict with the Karen Read trial. And we're going to talk about that because there's been still a lot of fallout. There's actually daily developments right now. But I want to bring in our guest. She is absolutely brilliant. I don't know if she even needs an introduction, but it is the one and only Jennifer Coffindaffer, who is retired FBI. Good afternoon, Jen.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for having me, John.
Absolutely. Do you prefer Jennifer or Jen?
Jen, when you have a last name like Coffindaffer, you have to cut everything else down. Middle name, Jennifer to Jen.
All right, you're talking to DePetro. I think most people know who you are, but if you don't mind, just the 60-second bio on what led you to where you are today.
Oh, wow. Well, I was an FBI special agent for 25 years, a special agent prior to that for 3 years, 28 years of federal law enforcement, and retired in 2016. I started a company that essentially retrain individuals in firearms and self-defense, marksmanship, how to safely handle weapons. And then I also am an expert working on various court cases. I have 7 cases right now, and on both the defense and the prosecution side. My cases are about 50-50. And I'm on social media and became a part of mainstream media. I'm the contributor of Law and Justice for News Nation. And that was kind of a happenstance. So I'm just glad to be here. I love to use my platform and be on platforms to advocate for victims and to understand cases.
Jen, how did you come upon, I'd love to hear, and I don't know, when did you discover the Karen Read trial? How did you kind of find your way into the case?
What a great question. A couple of, different followers will every once in a while just DM me. I used to have my DMs completely open. I had to close them recently. But they DM'd me and they said, hey, will you look at this Karen Read case? And this happens a lot with different cases. Hey, what do you think about this case or that case? And then I had another one come on and say the same thing. Will you just take a look at it? So the first thing I did was get a hold of all the court documents I could, just kind of read over everything, make sure I had a legal sort of understanding of the case and a factual understanding. And then I usually, like what I do in all these cases that I'm not really following, this was though about 2 years ago, I put out a tweet and all I said was, whoa, the Karen Read case, I just got done reviewing the legal documents and there's definitely strong probable cause that she hit John O'Keefe with her vehicle and left him to die in the snow, words to that effect. And then I was barraged with hate and just vitriol. And I thought, what in the world is all of this all about? And then dug deeper into things. And then I guess no turning back, John.
I want to talk about the latest because there is a lot to get to. First, I am curious, what was your thought? It was actually a week ago when we had found out, shortly, right around 3:00. I was in the courtroom, and as I had put out, you could tell. I was looking at some of the posts that I made that right away, the Karen Read, they were all hugging, they were giggling. This was before the O'Keefes got in. They looked, as I described, they looked like lottery winners. But what was, take me through, you learning of the verdict.
Well, I was actually away in New York working with a client. So I was kind of working just nonstop. But I asked Kevin Lenahan with Yellow Cottage Tales to give me a heads up if anything was going to break. And I believe I got a text message. I think it was from him. But no matter, I got it. So I took a very brief break, listened to the verdict, I think made 2 minutes worth of commentary or something. And then that was it. I had to go back and work. I was right in the middle of a very important work project. And so it wasn't really until I was back in my hotel room that I really, had to really decipher what had happened. It was something I had anticipated from 2 days prior. The minute the juror questions came back, I knew there was no way she was going to be found guilty of counts 1 and 3. Count 2, I thought might just be point 1 or point 5, which is what happened. But I was hoping that it was possible, since they delayed so long to make their decision, that they were considering the OUI manslaughter.
What do you make of the fact that obviously we've heard from some of the jurors? So to me, it keeps adding different layers to the story. Not only what they're saying, what they're not saying, where they're saying it, right, where they're going on, but Juror 11 that emerged last Thursday night and then Friday was essentially everywhere. But Jen, what do you make of Juror 11, Paula, saying, well, I think her car, I think she backed up and it touched him, but just touched him a little bit. I want to hear your thoughts on that.
John, initially when I started seeing the comments specifically from Juror 4 and Juror 11, because that's where it began, and then we had Juror, the foreman come out, and then another juror come out, Juror 12, I thought it was, but nevertheless. So I've watched, listened, taken in everything. And I just want to say, if I may, generally speaking, anybody who has been engrossed in the criminal justice system since they were 22 years old, and that's literally when my internship began with the federal government, and I've devoted my life, really, the biggest part of my life, 30 years, but really more than that, because I still work on cases for the federal government. Juries are sacrosanct, John.
Yeah.
In all the cases I've worked, sitting in those courtrooms side by side with the prosecutor.
Yep.
It was an honor, John, when the jury would want to speak with us.
Sure.
The prosecutor, myself, it was an honor. And I've gotten so many notes over the years throughout different trials that I literally keep in a box that is way more special than any of the awards I've gotten. The awards don't mean anything compared to the times. I've got all my awards on. If you went in my closet, you would just see both walls and the back walls. That's where all my awards are, in my closet. Other than a couple two that I keep out that are pretty special. But other than that, those letters, John, mean everything to me, because that's when the trier of fact took your case, looked at it, and the truth came out. They have such a huge responsibility, John, to find guilt or innocent, to have that life-changing, and then also to look out for the victim in the case, right? It's two-pronged. And so, John, when I saw what was coming out with these jurors, first of all, I've never seen anything like it, John. I never in my career have I seen jurors hit the media, ever. Now, obviously on this side of things, I'm seeing it in this case. We saw it with the first trial a little bit, nothing like what we're seeing now, and we're a weekend. So I've got to tell you, just with this case, I'm shaken with the criminal justice system. I'm shaken with the jury process. When I say shaken, I just mean that it's destroyed that virginity of that sacrosanct jury position, in my eyes.
Do you find, I'm not the conspiracy type, but it just seems odd to me that they're the ones that are speaking. To me, it sounds like a script, because they're mimicking a lot of the same things. And I want to just stay with Juror 11, the first one that came out on TMZ, to say, even if you're 99.9%, you still have to go. That's reasonable doubt, as if 0.1%. As we've talked about, I don't think you'd get any crime if you follow that barrier or follow that model. Then it's as if you couldn't get a conviction with an eyewitness, because it's almost saying that, I mean, unless you have video, it's not even 100%. Even if you watch the NFL on a Sunday on some of the calls, they're never 100%. So, but you know, you have to go with what you have and make the decision. But Jen, the juror 11, I don't think people understand. She was mocking the prosecution. I mean, these were as if Alan Jackson, this is just my interpretation, as if Alan Jackson sat down and wrote a script. She was mocking it. And she even threw a jab at Hank Brennan, where she said, you know, I think you ought to stick to being a criminal defense attorney. How would a juror who, nothing against occupation, but like, where does someone, you know, Welcher wasn't believable, laughing about that. Oh, I was laughing about that. Knocking all the police witnesses. I just want to, what was your impression of that? It seemed, I've never heard anyone that'd be so brazen on something like that.
You know, John, as I said, with each of the jurors, different things they've said, you know, Hank Brennan said it beautifully. In a sense, justice was denied for the O'Keeffes, and there will be nothing that really can ever be done with that. First of all, there can never be justice, because John O'Keefe will never walk again. He'll never play with the kids. He'll never. So justice has been denied. I do think, you know, I originally thought, could it be just that you really had these jurors coming together and there were reasonable doubt due to different factors? You know, I was never happy that there was no rebuttal put on. I was never happy that the DNA from the dog, and believe me, I'm a huge Hank Brennan fan. There, you know, I'm part of his fan club.
Sure.
But I never understood that. I never understood not bringing on a medical expert on that side. And I will say, I think the crash reconstructionist for the Commonwealth that they chose, Dr. Welcher, I think he really fell short. I always said in the first trial, the only reason that wasn't a guilty verdict was because the crash reconstructionist was not well spoken. He was literally terrified up there. He was shaking.
Trooper Paul.
Yes. Trooper Paul, he was not allowed to read from his report, which he asked to do on the stand, and Judge Cannoni said no. He was terrified to really explain his viewpoint on the case, and it came out so inept. And I was so excited, and I've said this from the beginning, in between the trials, the number one key component here, because everything else is proven, it's great, but the jury is going to want to see, how did John O'Keefe end up here? How did this happen?
Right.
And even with all his accreditations, all his background and experience, and his PhD and everything else, he fell short, because I've always said this, a crash reconstructionist can take where the body ends up and work backwards, and have different scenarios where the person's leaning over, looking backwards, where the person's looking sideways, where they're standing up, where they're close to the car, where they're far away from the car. And they can enact how that body got where it was within a reasonable variance. Because of chaos theory, it's never going to be perfect every time, but you're going to get it within a variance. And we saw ARCA do something very similar. That's what I wanted this reconstructionist to do, to be able to say, within reasonable certainty, using an exact dummy with the exact arm. You know, I thought that was so ridiculous that they used a mini arm, but that he landed there when the car hit him with the taillight, and the fragments of that taillight impacted on the shirt here. And he did not do the experiments. The reenactments to get us there. And I always thought that was a failure. But having said that, do I think that this jury, that this wasn't, I'm going to call it a nullification, because
Yes.
I think it was nullified by predetermined concepts and notions of many of the people going in. And you know what, John? We may never know the truth until decades later, like in the OJ
Right.
trial, played the
You're right.
tape. The OJ jurors now tell the truth, later told
Yes.
the truth of what really happened. 90% of them, not the whole shebang. And let's just mark this day and say, what's going to happen a decade from now? Will
Right.
some juror come forward and really tell the details of how this
Yep.
verdict was reached? I don't know.
What do you think of the fact that, one thing, this is, to me, Jen, has been a very orchestrated defense. From we know how they bombarded social media, but from the walk-in to how they had her go up to sidebar, but they have also, they've really dominated the airwaves. Once again, the Commonwealth is not saying anything. Morrissey's not saying anything. Hank Brennan released a statement that we'll touch on, but they even have the jurors out there. So there was one woman that did say, she did an interview with Channel 5, said, I was a not guilty, but then she said there was some piece of paper she was looking for. She couldn't find it. But right now, I just wonder, in this climate, what juror would step forward and say whatever. To me, since the verdict last a week ago, this has been a full, steady drumbeat campaign of the defense. Yannetti and Alessi doing all these podcasts, Jackson releasing the statement that we'll talk on. But like, to me, they're in motion. The campaign is still going, and their campaign is that she was innocent, not that she beat the rap. She was innocent. The real killers are out there. Reopen the investigation. This is another thing that I don't recall anything like that. I mean, sometimes cover the case, the defendant is still saying, I didn't do it, but to me, their campaign is still rolling.
Well, right. I mean, there's two campaigns rolling, right? There's the people who believe, there's three, I think, schools of thought on this case. There's a school of thought that I think is carried by millions that know about this case, because remember, not that many people know about this case, really, the ins and outs of it, probably millions, but it's not like the whole country knows.
Right.
And they either believe that she is factually guilty. This is an OJ / Casey Anthony. This is, bad. They got it wrong. But you have to move on, right? Then there's a second school of thought that believes she's guilty. And I would say this is some of my followers. They believe she's definitely factually guilty, but they believe that the Commonwealth did not prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. Yep. And then there's the camp that believes she's innocent, right? There's three basic camps. And I really think that latter camp, the last camp I mentioned, is very small, but they're very, very, very loud.
They are.
And intimidating and bullying.
Yes. And aggressive. Yes.
But I hate to see it, John, on either side. Every time I spoke about this case, wrote about this case on my Twitter, it was like stepping into the pig pen. I always would say that. I'm like, okay, I got to talk about Karen Read. When people, different stations would call and networks and say, hey, we want you to talk about Karen Read. Okay, got to go back into the pig pen, because it's a pig pen case. It's dirty. It's mucky. It's ugly. It's unprofessional. It's not the way I roll.
No.
So I've never ever liked covering this case. But you do it because you see, for me, my biggest thing was getting contacted by witnesses in this case and by the accused. And really realizing, is your point you're making right now, there is no voice for them.
No.
They didn't want to have a voice. They didn't want to go into that pig pen because for obvious reasons, they have litigation that they knew would be coming.
Sure.
And so
And
from
it's nasty. It's nasty and ugly.
it's nasty
You
and
know,
ugly.
it's like going into the sewer. Like you gotta realize you're about to get muddy and dirty. No matter how you approach it, it's like trying to cross a river. Like you're gonna get wet. You're gonna get muddy. It's gonna come. Jen, what do you make of that woman on Monday, literally doing a dance in front of the O'Keefe's house on Fairview? Excuse me, on Meadows.
It was so disturbing. I mean, I was glad to see she wasn't screaming and hollering, with the
Right.
children home, saying something like I've heard before, you death mongers, you supporting murderers. I mean, the things they have screamed at the O'Keefes in
Ugh.
earshot of children, it's sickening. And I think it's why so many of us are emotionally attached to this case, because we empathize with the pain that the family has had to endure,
Yes.
with what the witnesses who are being falsely accused, what they are still whatever he's still enduring. Honestly, you would think once there
Yes.
was a verdict, what Hank Brennan said, okay, let's please just leave the witnesses alone. That's where I'm at this point. But I think what does happen is it ends up, you know, kind of becoming what I'm seeing as a little tit for tat. And I'm not going down in that sewer and
Sure.
playing the tit for tat.
Touch on the Hank Brennan statement. I mean, I thought it was very classy. I was on with Julie Grant Monday morning at Court TV. She read it. Um, he's come under fire. We're going to talk about that. But just what is your initial reaction to the statement that Hank Brennan put out? I'm glad that he wanted it very clear that this should not be interpreted as the search goes on for the royal, the real killers. We had the wrong person. I like how he mapped it out. I took a thorough review of this, and all roads led to the same person.
No, that statement is the epitome of who Hank Brennan is. He's classy, he's articulate, he is very smart. He writes masterfully. He, in very succinctly, actually, gets his point across. And to your point again, there is only one person responsible, according to the facts, according to the investigation, according to the FBI, according to what his findings were. And that's just reality. And the thought that anybody has, I think he just wanted to quell that there's going to be some investigation to anybody else when there's no facts, no circumstances, no probable cause
No.
to show anybody else is responsible. That ship has sailed, and it's not going to happen. It's already been done. They've already looked into everybody. They've had him before the grand jury. They've been interviewed. They've looked at all the evidence. It's not there.
What do you think of, Alan Jackson, now 3,000 miles away? The statement he put out, Yannetti didn't have his name on it. Alessi didn't have his name on it. It's Alan Jackson, wherever he is, whether he's back in LA or went on vacation or Hawaii, whatever. But what do you make of Jackson, who, to me, it just seems so personal? Hank Brennan pointed out, especially a lot of those pretrial hearings, the Signal app with ARCA, they basically misled the judge, the payment. What did you think of the Alan Jackson statement? That, to me, it was, now that he's back in LA, obviously really going after Morrissey, but also really kind of poke the eye of Hank Brennan.
It was so typical. I could have written what he wrote and mailed it to him, and he would have. It was exactly what I thought he would write. It's exactly the character he has. It's classic Alan Jackson. Look, he's a maestro. He's a actor. He's theatrical, emotional. I mean, we saw the reaction of the verdict, that hug, the kisses. I saw 2 kisses.
Yes.
We saw, the embrace. This is personal. This, again, something I've never seen in 28 years of federal law enforcement is the relationship between a defendant and a prosecutor, or I'm sorry, a defense attorney. You have to spend a lot of time together in some regards, building your case, but never seen shopping, drinking, whatever else. I've never seen anything like this. I think it is so unethical, but that's just my reaction.
That's who they are. I mean,
another,
that's how they operate. It is a lot of time for people not related. I mean, these people, they spend a lot of time together. And at different times, I'd hear, it was growing a little thin with the late night phone calls and texts from her. And you always got to kind of react to her. And you'd see sometimes she's very animated in court. But to me, to me, Jen, I want to hear your thought. But to me, this case, people may not like it, but it begins and ends with Alan Jackson. To me, you just don't have the way they approached every element of this without him. He is the quarterback.
Well, he's the coach. He's the man. He's in charge of everything that happened. That's for sure.
Yep.
But he is good. When I say he is good, he gets the results he wants.
Yes.
There's so many decisions made in court. And I always said, listen, I don't come down hard on Judge Cannoni because I think she had a very difficult job, to say the least. I know she's endured death threats. I know she's endured total harassment, intimidation attempts, everything else. I mean, I know it's probably been so ridiculously difficult for her. I was glad to see she got some honor, Woman of the Year or something like that.
Yes.
I thought that was well deserved in a sense. But was I enraged by so many of her rulings? Absolutely. Did I not agree with them? Absolutely. But I can tell you the defense was equally as angered about some of her rulings. So
Sure.
Maybe that's a sign of a good judge when you're teeing off everyone. But at the end of the day, and it better come, those sanctions better come, because she found him in violation of Rule 14, not once, but twice.
Yes.
And of lack of candor, which it's a nice way to say in court, lying. There's no difference in those words. Lack of candor is lying. Yeah. That's what was found. And so we'll see what happens. I think it's really important, John, and I know some people are, trying to investigate if there's really what I call brick and mortar evidence. In other words, if there's any phone calls, if there's any paper trail of money, if there's any Signal app, we'll probably never see anything, but
yes.
Text messages between any of these jurors and the defense, unless there's some sort of brick and mortar, unbelievable finding, like what happened with Arca, right? Remember in court, they said they had no relation, they never talked. Didn't you just meet me today? And then we find out, that was all not true. The emails.
That's right. I think if there was some sort of a trail or something, it could have developed, just in the last week or 2 weeks, really, because you were still looking at 18. So, it's possible if someone, again, I'm just saying possible, that someone could have tried to make a connection. You still wouldn't be guaranteed that individual would have been one of the 12 chosen. But you know what, Jen, I just don't think, I agree with you. There has to be, as you say, brick and mortar. But look at, every single day, right now, somewhere in the world, there's somebody trying to smuggle something in through an airport. There's political corruption. There's sports scandals. There's judges that, take bribes and go to jail. There's attorneys that do stuff. So, they're so brazen. If there was ever a case where there's certainly someone that has, gone close to the line, if not gone over the line, from Marie Russell basically saying how, she's in the limo with Alessi and had to send something back to his office, and they're just organizing it for me. As Hank Brennan was saying, boy, it sure sounds like they were writing it. Like every different part of this defense was pretty questionable. So, I'm not about to make accusations like that, but I just find the way this came down, how confident they were, and the words that we're hearing, it's almost too perfect. It's that there just does seem to be something odd about this whole thing.
You know, how I'm looking at this is I'm letting the jurors speak for themselves. In other words, I haven't made any comments
Yes.
now for several days, and that was in regard to what I saw in specifically with the first two jurors. I did a live right after the trial from New York.
Yep.
And essentially, those jurors all this is my only advice: listen to the jurors. It's remarkable what's being said, and I feel like because they're doing so much talking and looking at the words they're saying, I don't need to say anything. They're painting the story, and I just feel bad. I really feel bad for John O'Keefe that this was who decided justice. Really do.
Yeah. And just one final thing on the jury members that have spoken. I mean, you have one that mentions a witness who did not testify in this trial. I'd consider that a red flag. And then the foreperson who everyone had mentioned didn't take any notes. I heard now that's trying to be spun to he has a photographic memory. I mean, I know people have photographic memory, but they still write things down. I'll say this. When I was in the courtroom, which I was obviously a lot, and when I had the sense that because of the way they were reacting, that they were getting what Hank Brennan was putting forward, because he told a very compelling story and he left nothing on the table. And I would say, in that courtroom, there's nothing about inside. It's all out by the flagpole. Now, when I listen to their comments, it sounds like they were so checked out and they came in with, it's possible what I was interpreting was not that they were absorbing it, but that their minds were already made up. That's just my impression.
Yeah, you had a bird's eye view. I always say the number one thing, that you do at the table with the prosecutor when you're sitting there, besides help with questions and follow-up questions and reading the witness, you're reading that jury every day, trying to get a pulse on where they're at, what they might want to hear more from, the witnesses that they connected with, the ones they didn't. So do you need another one to come on to reinforce a similar idea or thought? All of that is really your job. And for all of us, we didn't get to see that. You were blessed with that bird's eye view of what was going on. So you were lucky with that. So it's so hard to say. But I think the jurors are letting us know, really, by their words, where their minds were at.
What do you think of Karen Reed? We've learned so much about her.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen her in front of the crowd at this, pinnacle moment. We've heard the voicemails. We've seen her talking about it. We've seen a lot of her. We've gotten an idea of what who she was leading up to this. I think it's interesting. We really don't know that much about her. I mean, there was I never encountered anyone at court that said, hey, I went to high school with her, went to college with her, we were longtime friends. No one got up and testified really on her behalf. It was that one woman from the waterfall. But what do you think of Karen Reed? What do you make of her?
Well, I think that, I mean, I think I have her sized up pretty well. But again, if you listen to her recordings, if you look at her behavior in court,
Yep.
if you listen to the words that she has said on camera and the way that those words conflict with one another from scene to scene. I mean, to be honest, I'm trying to find the right words to say this. I think the reason maybe I'm so at peace with this, and when I say at peace, I don't mean I'm at peace that the verdict was correct. I'm at peace that the verdict is done, and I
Yes.
only all my energy. I'm not going to cover Reed other than when a particular acute item comes up. Like as an
Right.
example, I didn't post on the woman dancing, but as soon as I got that film, I, you know, contributed to other people who were covering that topic. So I'll always do that. And then, of course, once the verdict is reached in the O'Keefe's case,
Yes.
uh, civil case, I will definitely, no matter what way it goes, I will do a tweet on that and maybe even a show on that. But other than that, as far as Karen Reed, I I can't find the right word. It's not that I guess it would be, and I know this is going to sound odd, but I think I really pity her. And I hate to say it that way because I don't want anybody to think I feel sorry for her. That's so pity might not be the right word. I just think she has such huge issues in every aspect that a human can have. That her her story and who she is and who she will be remembered for is written, and she wrote it, and it's a horrible life and a horrible existence, and so I'm sort of neutral on her because I know just I can't imagine having to live a life like that. So
What is your FBI background? What does that tell you about the day of, when this happened, and then, the next day, um, anyone that has followed. I thought Hank Brennan. Let me put it this way: Hank Brennan, in closing, when he talked about, the phone calls, the early morning phone calls, and he was so masterful with the pivot. I just think he did a really clear picture of sizing up, what was the motivation for the statement, why she said certain things, why she hung up on someone. I wonder how much, if that spooked her a little bit, that to me, like Hank Brennan really had her number.
well, I think many of us have her number. You probably have her
Yes.
number. I mean, we've all known people like this in our lives. For me, I've really only ever known one person personally like she is. Only one person in all my years, and I'm pretty old. Um, but in my work life, not in my personal life, in my work life, I've this is a common person. It's a common personality type. It's a common thread of actions that you see or that I saw all the time in my work life, and and so that's why I guess I say it's kind of benign to me because I've seen so many people like this, um, and I know what they're about, and I know what kind of life they live when they're by themselves, and um, it's a terrible existence.
Jen, what if this had been gender reversed? Let's make it that she's the one found, and it's the male that has seemingly some drinking issues. How does this story play out?
I think gender really played into this. I mean, the number one thing that played into this, number one, was money. If you had a continuum of how this happened, number one is money, because the money that she had made it possible to have this PR spin,
Sure.
to have the attorneys she had, everything. So it starts, John, with money. So if you had a man with that kind of a money, could this have ended up also an acquittal? I think it's possible. I mean, look at Spacey,
Yes.
in that case. But all in all things equal, and I've always said this. I said she's very similar to the suitcase, the woman that put her man in a suitcase with hide and go
Oh,
seek.
I
Sarah,
know who you.
sorry,
Yeah.
Sarah. Her name escaped me for a second.
Okay.
But in other words, if Sarah Boone had money, if Sarah Boone had the PR, if Sarah Boone had all of that, could she have gotten off? Could she have? She may have. And so, I mean, this should be a testament to all of us. It's really, isn't it ironic? Isn't it ironic that so many people that I think are behind Karen Read
Yes.
are angry about law enforcement? They're angry about a system of the people being in charge being corrupt. They're angry about all of that. Yet,
Yep.
look at the system that got her off. I mean, their little side system. It's an irony. There should be a book written about it, not about Read, but about our system. Because for somebody like me to see what I've seen with the jurors and what I saw in court with the defense attorney being found for lack of candor, but still being able to defend her.
Yes.
It's just jaw-dropping for somebody who's been in the system so long to see that happen, John.
Jen, I also want your thought on, and I was trying to explain to a friend of mine, outside the courthouse, these people, they've never met her. She doesn't know who they are. She's the one on trial. I'm there to cover it. And I believe the case that the Commonwealth has made. I've never covered a murder trial where I was rooting for the person that's on trial for it. And it's usually reserved for some family members, friends, something like that. Covered organized crime trials where, you get some interesting people in the courtroom. But when I tell you, and just your thought on it is, and I was trying to explain to someone, the vitriol, like the hatred that they had. Now, they would recognize me, and I'm not, this isn't a victim thing, but I found that some of them, and it was mostly women, but they were almost surprised at their anger. It was what I would call it's like unreasonable anger. As if I was trying to tell someone, if you were in a grocery store and your cart accidentally tapped someone, or you went in front of someone in line and they pull a weapon, like the vitriol, the anger, and this is for it. To me, it's like something you'd encounter in war, or you would encounter if they were the family of the person that lost their life and they were so angry about it, like a very gruesome murder, or a child or something like that. But this is, we're Americans. We're all outside the courthouse. I'm telling you, some of them, if they had a weapon, they would have used it. It is the only way. And maybe you've had more experience, but I was trying to tell someone, it's like undescribable rage, and you can't reason with it. And I could even hear a couple of them trying to calm each other down. This one woman kept saying, Mary Ellen, remember our word, whatever it was, flower, like, Mary Ellen, get a hold of yourself. And she's she's huffing and puffing, having a panic attack because I walked past her. So you tell me.
I mean, we've seen it before. We saw it with OJ, the OJ trial, where no matter where you were in that country, in our country, and that verdict was played, you had cheers, uncontrollable cheers on one side, and then on the other side, head scratching, upsetness, just could not believe it, beside themselves. I mean, and then throughout that trial, and just imagine if that trial had social media, John. Oh my God, just how. And I always said, I mean, obviously the other core besides the money that I spoke of, the other main issue, and again, I am not a Judge Cannoni hater. I actually, women, I always want to, nothing against you, John, but I always really want to support women who, particularly if it's somebody who's in an area that is mostly men, right?
Sure.
In other words, like a judge, police officer, those are areas that are mainly male dominated. I always really want to support those women because I know how hard their journey was. And so I'm not trying to be negative to Judge Cannoni, but Judge Cannoni, by this case, not having jury selection out of Boston, it had to be out of Boston, the biggest city where there's so many people there. I always would post about, I was on the airplane flying and there were two people behind me from Boston. I turned around, I'm like, oh, do you know who Karen Reed is? Who? Karen who? And then just a week ago, I was on a hiking trail and somebody recognized it. I was with my husband.
Right.
Had a shirt on, right? And they said, oh, are you from Boston? Because he had a Boston shirt. And he said, no, I'm not. And then I thought, oh my gosh, I got to ask about Karen. So I literally was hoofing it up this mountain at Mach 1,000 trying to catch him because they were walking so fast. Never seen people walk faster. I said, do you guys know who Karen Reed is? They said, yeah, isn't she that woman at the trial? Like, people don't know. Another time when I was in an airport, because that's usually when I run into people from Massachusetts, and we were at this eating fish and chips at this place in this airport, and I said, oh, do you know? He had no idea who I was talking about, not much less John O'Keefe. I say John O'Keefe, they really don't know, but Karen Reed, they didn't even know.
Right.
It had to come from Boston, and they had to be sequestered. That's period, end of story. Perfect case scenario. Been out of Boston. Not to say that people in Boston didn't know about the case, but there are millions in Boston that know little to nothing about the case.
Yeah, and a little more transient than suburban. Jen, before I let you go, and you're so terrific, and I want to give you a chance to mention so people can find you and watch you, but give some advice. People that are watching, how should people handle the Reed supporters who are, they're so fired up. They're doing like a victory tour and they're still very much out there. And anyone that steps into it, but just what's your advice to anyone that has to deal with that crowd?
Well, I want to say this for not only the FKR crowd, because I do believe there are a lot of people that support her not guilty verdict, as I mentioned, because they don't think the case was proven. That's a big difference from the FKR crowd that is crazy.
Yeah.
All right. So I want to distinguish that just because you think Karen Reed should not have been convicted, I truly understand that doesn't mean you're part of the movement, the mob. But I want to say this too, John. I'm saying this for both sides of the aisle. It is time and I'm not talking about sleuthing and finding out evidence or finding out maybe things or putting up a particular statement and discussing the statement that was made in a professional manner. I'm not talking about that. I am talking about the hate and vitriol, the name calling, the I hope you kill yourself. I can't wait for you to die. You're this, you're that is going around. It's definitely on the FKR side. I think on the other side, there's some that's being kicked back that is definitely below the mark any of us should want to be at. And this is you ready for my response? This is really intellectual. Block. That button is there for a reason. I've blocked hundreds.
Absolutely.
What's crazy
So
is
do I.
block,
It
the more
is.
join. Even though I lose 200,
Yes.
I gain 210
It's worth
because
it.
no
Yeah.
one on my page, no one wants to deal with that. I get DMs where I shut them down recently all the time. They're like, I'm afraid to say anything, John. That's what they say. I want to give my opinion, but I'm just going to DM you with it because they'll come after me. That has no place in true crime. I've already said it's gonna have no place on my platform. I am like blocking, like bam, gone.
You have to.
Wrong.
You have to.
I want to be
Because then, yeah, it's not worth it. One last thing though is, and I'm going to go back to Jen, Hank Brennan, when he said that Karen always had to have the last word. I get this sense that it's not enough for her that she got found not guilty. I sense that there's this feeling of the fact that her people are amplifying, the search is on for the real killers. The real people are out there. Reopen the investigation. I am not convinced that Karen Reed is done with this. I think she views the witnesses that testified. I think she views them as it's time for retribution. And she won't be happy until either A, the investigation's open, B, somehow they, get dragged into court or whatever it may be. But I just don't get the sense that she's the type, personality now, to just go away. I think, that statement of, it's either me or Jen. And I don't think the movement is going anywhere. I think the way they keep this going is this whole notion of the search is on for the real killers.
It won't last. It won't last. I mean, open what investigation? The FBI's already decided, and quite frankly, the FBI has no time for this. Guess what the FBI is doing? Fighting terrorism right now.
That's right.
Looking
Yes.
for every stone for sleeper cells, trying to protect our country, trying to make sure that they've already arrested 1,500 Iranian nationals that snuck into our country illegally. I'm not saying they're all terrorists, but do some have nexus? I've been through this whole thing with 9/11. And when our borders were open, I kept saying, this has got to be the concern, is terrorism. So the FBI has no interest in this deal. That was a political deal with Rachel Rollins, and we saw her support certain people after this verdict. And then Levy, they're gone. And, the Bureau had no place in that. They have a place with public corruption, where their place is with Sandra Birchmore, where you have an absolutely crooked cop.
Agreed.
Literally sexually assaulting a 15-year-old up through the age of 23, having a relationship with her, and then staging a strangulation. I was screaming from the rooftops about that when Karen Reed came on the scene or whatever. I mean, that is an egregious situation. That's the case that you would love to see strong-willed supporters behind. And the other thing, I'm going to say this right now. I hope Mr. Morrissey, who's the DA for Norfolk County, I hope he indicts Farwell. That's the person accused of Sandra Birchmore's murder. And I hope he indicts him for not only her murder, but the murder of that unborn child, because the FBI can't. Right. There's no federal statute to cover that. That's the kind of thing I want to see in the future for, the people that are looking to have something to do, because most of these people, John, they don't have jobs. I work. You have a show. You have a journalism career.
Yes.
They are literally the quite essential people that used to watch in the 1970s, 80s, and 90s, The Guiding Light, and All My Children, and pop a Valium, and prepare for dinner. They have nothing to do all day, and Therein lies a big problem. They're going to want to latch onto something when I say a big problem. And I hope they latch on Birchmore. I hope Morrissey does the right thing on that case. And so I do hope that.
How can people follow you and look for you with your great work?
Thanks, John. I'm on Twitter X at Coffindaffer FBI. And then I have a podcast called Break the Case with Jen Coffindaffer. And actually, I have a show tonight. We're going to be talking about Barry Morphew and Suzanne Morphew. It's a case I followed for 2 years. Went cold, or didn't go cold. It's a long story, but it's a great case. He's been recharged. And I'm really excited and looking for justice for Suzanne Morphew, because that's a case that it's been 5 years. 5 years.
You are so talented. You are a joy to talk to. And again, you guys, you were so phenomenal with Yellow Cottage Tales and Kevin. Jen, great to talk to you. Thank you for taking the time, and we'll talk again.
Thank you, John.
All right, folks, there she is. She is just fantastic and so outspoken. Well, listen, good afternoon, everybody. I'll stay a couple more minutes. I didn't get a chance to go through the questions. Maybe we'll do that a little bit earlier, right? We're still kind of finding our way through. People certainly seem to like our afternoon edition of doing this. If everybody's patient, I can go through. Let me check. Okay. Let me do this. Bear with me. Yes. Let me talk a few more minutes. And we are going to keep talking about it, folks. And especially, as I've said, and I was mentioning, where Jen is just so dynamic is she's got the background with being an FBI agent. And she is like a lot of other people. She didn't have to get drawn into this case. She did get drawn, like we all did, into the case. And she's had to deal with a lot of the nonsense that everybody has. So now, folks, just a couple of things. I repeat, although since we've been live, I haven't been looking at it and so forth, but the element of the fact that the O'Keefes, there's a story today. Hi there, Courtney. And see, I don't like that. Where my thoughts are. I hate people that do stuff like that. We'll just get rid of them. Again, I was not watching the chat. I have no idea if we had trolls or not. I was very relaxed. Thank you. I had a chance. I want to thank also, there have been people, folks, see the scrolling of both Cash App and also of Venmo. And thank you. I did see some super chats, and I want to thank, hold on one moment. I know where we can disagree. What did I want to think? Where we disagree is I'm not convinced that the Karen Reed crowd. Oh, I want to thank Kim. Yes, thank you, Kim. It was very nice of Kim Shen for supporting the program. I'm not convinced that. Oh, good. Thank you, Debbie. And folks, remember, if you want to send me a message, the easiest thing to do, and I think Debbie was saying, was go to the website, DePetro.com, and then you just hit contact. And then that is a great, easy way, because I recognize not everybody is on all the various platforms. And then the thing I like about DePetro.com is it has, nope, that's not it. All right, so Facebook seems to be a problem. I want to address, we had someone on Facebook yesterday that said oh, okay, thank you, Robin. I know there were that many. We had the situation from someone on Facebook. Thank you, Robin. Sorry about that. Folks, it's all part of it. See, this is, oh, good. We had trolls, says Donna. Well, Wendy, they didn't call him to testify. And I think because you want about this case, I had someone call me yesterday from Massachusetts to harass me. I don't know what that means. But here's my understanding is that the father could have got up there and said what she meant was when she was backing up at the house. But let's just stay current. The Alan Jackson statement about Hank Brennan, that was appalling. He doesn't release it till he's 3,000 miles away. Yannetti's not on that. And suddenly Jackson, who's in LA, is taking shots at Hank Brennan. And I think it's very curious, some of the media with these, the jurors are going. To me, when I hear the jurors, it sounds like they're reading a script. It sounds like they're reading a script. That's a new one. The juror, the foreperson who never took notes, now said, oh, I have a photographic memory. I've never heard of that. That's a different one. That's new. I think they're going to fade, but I believe, here's the problem, is I'm still not convinced they're going to go away. As Hank Brennan said, weren't Yannetti and Hank friendly? Well, as much as you could be. They have to, there's a kind of like a code amongst attorneys. And notice Yannetti, David Yannetti's name was not on that. But folks, I want to repeat what I've said, which is I think this whole rationale of the search is on for the real killers. I've said, I think it is, oh, good. Thank you, Cashin. I think it is, I think it's dangerous rhetoric. I think they're not going to be happy until there's some kind of an incident. And I don't know what to make, actually, of this campaign that they continue to run. Now, remember, there's a very good possibility that she's going to get hit, Karen Reed, that she's going to get hit with charges. And she could get hit with witness intimidation charges. Very, very good chance of that. So, no, this is not a cold case. I mean, that is, and I have people, by the way, folks, I have people, and I want to remind people, because I have people that say, there was someone today that said, why did you're deleting my opinion? It's not an opinion. You're putting forth misinformation. It's as I've said, there's a difference of it. It's not an opinion that they're trying to put forward. They're trying to change the facts. Why I don't think this should go away right away is because it's almost as if they're saying we have to accept what they consider to be the truth, which is she was totally innocent and this was a total misunderstanding and poor Karen. And I don't know any rational person that thinks that. And I don't care who they have on. And the fact that, these jurors that are talking and they found, oh, Alessi was brilliant. I was in the courtroom. It was torture. And all that Marie Lapazada was, oh, that woman was fantastic. Yeah, I guess if you like heavy breathing, she was great. Like what? I can't, I refuse to follow this nonsense they're trying to put out. And I know there's a lot of them. But as I've said to many of you, I still believe, you have to put what you know out there and then look at the people that, yes, witness in conspiracy charges, and then they find your way here. So I'm not ready to give it up. And I think, and let me just be very clear. See, you can't fall prey. Hold on one moment, only because there's someone trying to reach me, and I'm just trying to say, just give me a couple of minutes. Hold on one more time. Here's the problem with Karen Reed and her crowd. And I'm not trying to be overly dramatic. And by the way, thank you for all the super chats. I'll get better at this. I don't know. A lot of times people put a question in a super chat. I should have read it like that. Thank you for following the page. Again, right now we're live on Facebook and X and YouTube, and our following keeps growing. I have people say, why don't you do this on TikTok? Because this is easy to navigate these three platforms. And TikTok is a lot of that crowd. But here's what I want you to understand. When you're dealing with this type of crowd, silence is compliance. Number one. Number two, you can't fall prey to appeasement. When you're dealing with individuals like this, Karen and her mob, it comes down to appeasement does not work. Appeasement is the diplomatic strategy, making concessions to an aggressive power in order to avoid conflict. But the problem is, appeasement is interpreted as weakness. These people, they don't understand. They have no pride or anything. Oh, good. Is there no mod here? No, I think we do. I don't see anything that's that bad. I don't know why anyone's asking that. I don't see anything offensive. I see someone asking, is there no mod here? I don't know why. We do. Debbie is right there. But then, Debbie's right there. She's very attentive. That's a problem. That's a problem. I wish I was wrong. If they walked out of there and we're all quiet, okay, that'd be one thing. Thank you very much. Thank you, Pat Brooks. Oh yeah, 100%. Terrible what they're doing to the O'Keefes. And again, Karen won't. Thank you, Pat Brooks. Karen won't call it out. Karen won't say, that's it. No one, leave these people alone. Now, probably because they have filed a wrongful death suit against her. So she's upset about that. But hear me out just for a moment. And I may differ than Jen, who I respect. And I just think she's so great. But if they had walked out and if she was like, I'm out of here, right? Like, phew, pulled it off, that's it. Going our way. That'd be one thing. That's not what's happening right now. They're doing a full-fledged, I think some of it is to, once again, poison the jury pool for the wrongful death suit. So what do? They have the jurors out there. She's innocent. They're out there. Jackson, Yannetti, Alessi. She's innocent. They got the wrong woman. They're not happy with the not guilty. They're not happy with that. What did Hank Brennan say? Karen always has to have the last word. I am telling you right now that I think she plans to make living hell for anyone that testified against her. I think she even feels that she's had to be quiet, but that she's going to go after them. Remember, in the HBO documentary, she said she was laughing that the Alberts and the McCabe's were being harassed, Karen was, and said, they should have been treated. It's hard for me to feel bad for them. They should have been treated as suspects. That is, what does that tell you? That is not someone rational. I think she's very vindictive, but it goes beyond that. And I want you to understand, to me, this plays into what, and again, I like Jen, we just disagree. When she's saying they don't want it over until everyone says, okay, we were wrong, she's innocent, we need to find the real people. To me, in Karen Reed's mind, she fantasizes the people in that house, some headline that says they're reopening the investigation. Those people, see, I believe, hear me out, and I will get an attorney on to talk about this, and we were going to have Joe Krosky Sr., but he got delayed, but we will, because he's great, and I love that man. His father and son, I spent a lot of time with the father. But see, I think in order to skate, I don't hear anyone talking about this. In order for her to skate and her little pet on the witness intimidation charges, they need the investigation reopened, because then it's Karen's narrative of they're suspects. I wasn't intimidating witnesses. I was pointing out suspects. To me, it's interrelated. I think in her mind, she's got the wrongful death suit of the O'Keefes. Just keep putting out there, right? Innocent, not guilty, not even not guilty, just innocent. But I think her path that she sees is we need a headline. We're going to put so much pressure that they're going to cave and say we're going to and it's stupid. You don't need to, as Hank Brennan said. All paths lead one direction. But I believe that that's what she is looking for. I think in her mind, right? It's like the line from Animal House. Nothing is over, Nothing is over till we say it is. That's what I think this comes down to. And I think she feels, yes, I agree, Pat Brooks. Thank you. I think this comes down to these are the headlines they want. Investigation is reopened. It doesn't matter. It could be cursory. It could be if somebody caves, if some politician says, what harm would it be? We'll just reopen it, like that type of thing. And then boom. How could you? Thank you, Tommy Hendricks. She won't let it go away. No, not this one. Has she done any interviews? No. How come? She's got her price. She's not going anywhere. She's not. Vindictive. Always has to have the last word. How dare they put me through that? All my loyal subjects, all my fans, they love me. We're going to go after them. We're going to say, just keep repeating that. We're going to put pressure on whoever, Governor Healy, someone. We need to reopen the investigation. She's not done. Because I believe, by the way, I'm not saying that this is solid. I'm not saying it's concrete. But I believe that they feel legally, if they could get this thing reopened, if they could proclaim that these people are actually suspects, not witnesses, what's the witness intimidation charge? That's more of, we were doing the work for you. And what's kind of frightening is think of the number of people out there that still believe this. They come into the chat. They don't have to be here. The messages they send, insanity. I don't identify. The messages that I get, I've never sent to anybody. I can't believe I'm reading this. Like, I can't believe another human. Now, granted, they're from all over the country. Actually, even some from all over the world. But I can't believe that this is regarding someone they've never met. She doesn't know them. They don't know her. The vitriol, the hatred. How dare you question her? It's not kind of crazy. It is crazy. Of course, it's insane. They're not going to go away. I'm going to give a bad analogy. All right? I'm going to give a bad analogy. But it's an analogy. But appeasement doesn't work. There are some forces. You can't be nice to them. They perceive it as weakness. You can't make considerations. You can't. The only thing they understand is force. Again, not a great example. Neville Chamberlain. Let's just let him have that land. Let's just let him take a couple of countries, and he should be okay. It should be fine. What did Biden say about Putin? Listen, he just wants a small sliver of territory, and I think we avoid the whole thing. Folks, it doesn't work that way. It's not. You have to approach this crowd like the scene in The Untouchables, right? Sean Connery, the Chicago way. They pull a knife, you pull a gun. They send yours to the morgue, you send 10 of theirs to the morgue. That's the Chicago way. The only thing this type of enemy understands, you can't be nice. You can't try to make peace. By the way, I want to be very clear. I'm not talking about violence. I'm just saying people have to speak out. People have to speak out. People have to not accept the truth they're trying to put forward. I'm not talking about anything remotely close. I'm not even talking about like confronting. I'm just talking about out in the stratosphere. Good people have to speak up. I'm not talking about anything that even approaches being within a mile of where they are. But I'm saying they're trying to make their narrative like that's the accepted truth. You know, I get messages from people, will you please just say she's innocent and then everything goes away? You know, I got the same thing. She was drunk. I'm going to sign off in a minute, and we always go longer than I thought, but pretty good with the numbers. And I have the hang of it with the with X. I'm moderating pretty well with that. Jen. There's so much of this. There is not one story in the Boston Globe about alcoholism and domestic violence. Not one. I'll take one. You know, they look for all different side stories. Not one story on domestic violence and alcoholism. Nothing on that. Not one story, not one reporter has gone to Mothers Against Drunk Driving and said, what did you think when all those people cheered when someone came out of the courthouse who had been found guilty of operating under the influence? Nothing. They don't even ask the question. Thank God Boston.com and Channel 25 deal coats, they just story about how the family system. But you don't need the rest of them. Well, you know, they're the ones that want to testify. Well, you know, they should just ignore it. That's what they're told. The O'Keefes should just ignore it. Right? The McCabe's, they should just ignore it. I like when people say that. Well, you know, the McCabe's should get off social media. They should just go, like, what? Why do they have to do something? Why can't the other people stop doing this? The jurors. Well, I don't take notes. I have a photographic memory. That's interesting. I've never heard that before. The lines they come up with. Huh. I wish I had known that when I was, you know, in high school. The teacher, you know, stop. Like, how come you're not taking notes? I have a photographic memory. I don't need to. That's what they're trying to do, though. I think that's the rationale. How can there be witness intimidation charges and witness intimidation conspiracy charges? How can it be if these people are suspects? I think that's where they're going. All right. Thank you, everybody. We're going to continue like this. I have different people I'm reaching out to, right? I like this. 4:30. Notice the crowd builds. Normally just 4:30 to 5:30. Obviously, I went a little bit long. I'll work it out a little bit. We'll work it out. But thank you, everybody. Make sure you follow the Facebook page. Make sure you follow YouTube. Become a subscriber. Make sure you're following the page. Thank you for all your support. We're staying on it. I'm staying on it. You know why? I refuse to accept their truth. No, never. Never. I am never. He's dead. I've never said, you know, in hindsight, maybe OJ. No. Never. No. They somehow manipulated a not guilty. But Hank Brennan said, all evidence still leads to one angry, well, he didn't say one angry drunk. Those are my words. All evidence still points to one angry drunken skank. He didn't say that either. He just said one individual. Thank you, Vicky Moore. What's this person? I don't know. Removing comments, you know, like, you know, I go away. Go away. Why? See what I mean? Like, what's wrong with them? You know what? They need to. These people need to. Thank you, Dick. These people need to understand. It's not that how can I say that? I don't care what they think. I have I couldn't, the expression, I could not care less. I don't acknowledge them. I'd rather talk to an animal. I'd be more curious to think what an animal thinks. Like their brain is gone. You just don't want my. No, I don't want anything to do with you. There's something wrong with people like that, I think. So, but no, we don't need to hear your thoughts. We don't need to hear your opinions. I'd rather, like, my circles don't cross circles with those types of individuals. Let me ask you a question. You're not asking any questions. Yes, we are going to do that tonight. All right. Good night, everybody. Good night, everybody. Yes. I'll see you later tonight at Road Patrol Live.